Let's talk about the illusion of explanatory depth. Now, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Let's kind of break down what it actually means. So, this is a situation where you think you understand something better than you actually do. And it happens all the time for us. So, when you're trying to solve a problem and you're spending a little bit of time with it and you're thinking through it, you're trying to discover that metaphorical or literal treasure, you're working through some kind of issue or possibility, you get through it for a time. And maybe you've watched a lot of videos on it, or you've thought about it a lot, and you begin to mistake that for actual mastery and expertise. And they talk about this idea of expertise in different ways. They say that there are multiple levels of progressing toward expertise. The lowest level is when you think you know something and you don't actually know it. Then the next level up is when you don't know something and you realize that you don't know something. And then a third level is you know something and you realize you know something. And then the highest level, some people say, is when you know something and you kind of downplay how much you know. Because there's a measure of humility. You know what you don't know, and you've reached that kind of higher level. Well, when we're talking about the illusion of explanatory depth, it's really common, especially in this digital world where you can be immersed in a whole lot of content about a subject. So you know a lot of broad facts, but you actually don't know the really complex aspects of it and the nuances of it. So here are some 5 thoughts to sort of work your way through that. How do we navigate that in our own thinking? The first one is just to acknowledge that recognition or memory is not the same thing as understanding. There's an old phrase that, knowledge is understanding that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. So you can have a bunch of facts and information, but do you actually kind of understand how they're connected and how they're related together? There's a deeper level of understanding that's important for us to distinguish between just the collection of facts and information. The second thought is explaining something can reveal the gaps. So the moment that you start to try to explain something to another person and they begin to ask you questions and you're trying to get into the details, all of a sudden your confidence level starts to drop as you're not able to answer the nuances and you realize how much you don't actually know still. And that's a really good thing. That's building that kind of epistemological humility that I've talked about before. So that's a great one. Explaining helps reveal the gaps. I wrote down a theory sounds solid until you try to walk someone through it. And that act of explaining it, and it exposes sort of the missing steps. The third one is sometimes vague thinking feels really comfortable. We avoid drilling down into the details because it's easier to stay on the surface. And when we get into the details, well, that's frustrating because we don't all have it figured out. So we look for a surface level solution and we stay at that level and we talk that way a lot until we convince ourselves that we are even greater experts just because we're ignoring the hard parts. And so we need to push through vague thinking to precise thinking. And I even think about that in terms of some of these videos that I create. And I put some of the videos up and I think, well, I got to a certain level of precision in my talking, but boy, I was a little bit sloppy with my word choice. And over time I come back and maybe I'll go back and redo some of those videos because of this very point. But you want to move from vague thinking, which is comfortable, to more precise thinking that is uncomfortable and it causes you to have to work harder. And well, it's not as fun sometimes because hard work is sometimes just that, hard. The fourth thing is building or testing, forces you to work toward some kind of clarity. When you apply an idea, you actually test it out, then you're actually going to see some of the gaps. So if that's why in the whole treasure hunt world, we see a lot of people that are trying to figure out solutions from their living room, sofa or from their home, as opposed to going and testing things out. And you've got to find some way to actually test things out. Otherwise, you're not going to get yourself to some greater level of clarity. There have to be some kinds of checks, something where you get feedback. One of the things that we know from theories of learning is it is almost impossible to learn something new without feedback. You have to have feedback loops. And so building something that you can test and get real, dependable feedback is going to be very, very useful. And then the fifth one is, good thinkers regularly recheck their level of understanding and comprehension. So you're continually going back, and before you treat an idea as really solid, you are testing that thing like crazy. You're checking it from multiple angles, and you're hesitant to say that you know this. I see that so often, even in the treasure hunting community, because I know a lot of the treasure hunting community watches my videos, is that people, they assert things as if they're, well, just that, assertions. They speak it as if it's real, or if they want to maybe speak it into reality. And that's not how the truth actually works. It doesn't matter how much you want it to be in one place. It's either going to be there or not be there. And you can't sort of think it or will it to be in the place that you want it to be. And so that's why good thinkers really check their ideas and they test them over and over again. And they talk about them as theories and possibilities that are worth consideration. They think in terms of sort of, even if you're not doing the real math, like game theory, in terms of percentages of possibility. Like maybe there's a 50-50 chance this could be right, which, by the way, a 50-50 chance is a really good odd in game theory. So I'd definitely try that out. And depending upon what the risks are, if it's low risk and it's a 50-50 chance, I'm going to try that every time for testing out, for example, if there is a solution to something and I can test it in a way with low risk. Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it. That is the illusion of explanatory depth. Let's not be so quick to assume that we understand it with as much depth as we seem to claim. Let's approach it with a little bit of humility, and let's build our depth over time. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.